Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Magical Megan. I am your host, Megan, and today we are going to be talking about how I got into Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. Now, I know some people do not want to hear me yammering on and on about myself for several episodes, but I just thought that today I would keep it a bit light and breezy because it is the 1st of September and it's back to Hogwarts Day, and I feel it's appropriate to talk about how I got into the series and how Hogwarts became my home, given that it is back to Hogwarts Day. This is just a reminder that if you want to have your voice heard or you want to discuss a certain topic, just message me in one of my social media links. The links are down below in the description, and I'm more than happy to have you guest star on the podcast. Now, moving on to today's topic, which is how I got into Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. As I said, I don't want to ramble on too much in any of my podcasts. I've already had to record this one several times over because I've realised I'm rambling, so I'm going to dive straight in. I first read the books in September 2009, so that's 9 years ago. I'm sorry, I'm old, you'll have to excuse my maths, but it is 9 years ago, almost to the day that I got into Harry Potter. And 9 years ago, I was 11 and a half years old, and I was just about to start secondary school, or in this case, I had started secondary school. And anyone who's familiar with the British schooling system will know that a year 7 in secondary school, which is what I was, is the same as being a first year at Hogwarts. So you're 11 and a half going on 12. I'm not quite sure what that translates as in other countries, but that's just sort of a brief sort of guideline as to the kind of age I was. So I was 11 and a half, and I was just starting secondary school for the first time. And anyone who's started a new school, whether it be secondary school, middle school, high school, you'll know that it is very, very nerve-wracking to be starting a new school, especially if you don't know the majority of people who are in your class. And so I was a very shy child. I wasn't very sociable, and so I was very, very nervous about starting secondary school. And so I kind of ended up gravitating towards the library because I always feel at home in libraries because I'm a huge bookworm. And in the library, they had several copies of the Harry Potter books. And I hadn't read the Harry Potter books. I'd seen bits of Chamber of Secrets because it was on TV occasionally, but I'd never seen it all the way through. I'd just seen clips here and there when there was nothing else on TV. And if you'd asked me anything about it, I probably would not have been able to tell you. So I kind of thought to myself, what's the big fuss about Harry Potter? They're always coming out with new films and new books. What's the big fuss? So I ended up taking out Philosopher's Stone from the library, and I took it home, and I remember opening it, and I remember sitting in bed and starting to read it, and I remember thinking, what is this? This is kind of a bit weird, like, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, what? And so I kind of wasn't immediately taken with it from the very first word, but I did quickly become very, very obsessed with it. And I remember going to my grandparents' house one weekend and sitting in the car reading it, and I remember sitting in my room at their house reading it, and I finished it in no time, and within a month I'd finished all the books because I just became completely enamoured with this world that J.K. Rowling had created. And I started to watch the movies as well. Unfortunately, I had just missed Half-Blood Prince coming out. I think it had come out a few months before, and I just missed it coming out. Like, I just missed seeing it in the cinema. So I didn't get to see that film in the cinema, but for Christmas, my parents did get me the first 5 movies in a big box set, and then they got me the 6th movie in a special 2-disc box set. So I can't really complain. But yes, I became extremely obsessed with Harry Potter, and it got to the point where, I had the book, I was taking at least 2 of the books out at a time from the library. I was reading them whenever I could, so I read them at home. I read them on the bus to and from school. I read them outside, we used to wait outside the classrooms before going into classes, so if we were waiting, whether it's to go into form time or to go into a class, I would sit there, open up a Harry Potter book. I would sit during my break and my lunchtime either in the canteen or underneath a tree that was in the courtyard. I would sit and read the Harry Potter books then. Sometimes I would sit in the locker rooms and read the books. Sometimes during form time we had quiet time, which was just where you sat and read a book or you did some homework. And I would just sit there and read the Harry Potter books. If I finished a quiz early in a lesson, or I finished my work early, and I finished the extension work, then I would just sit there and read Harry Potter. So I was taking every single chance I could to read Harry Potter. I think the reason I became so obsessed with Harry Potter was because I kind of did see a lot of similarities between myself and the characters, and this is very, very, I'm sure everyone says this, and it's a bit of a cliche to say it, but I did see a lot of myself in Hermione, because I was the same age as Harry and Hermione, for a start, but then Hermione was this really badass character. I don't want to shame any girly girls on this podcast, I don't want to do that at all, but for me, it was, every time I read about a girl in a book, she had to be very, very pink and feminine. So Hermione was a bit of a change. And, I read about her love of reading. She was top of the class. And I was never top of the class, but I was a bit of a geek when I was younger. I did all my homework on time. I did all my work quickly. I was a bit of a teacher's pet. So I can kind of relate to that as well. But it was also the fact that she's described as not being particularly pretty. She's kind of, it says that she's got very large front teeth. And, I didn't know this at the time, but I do have kind of very large front teeth, especially at the top. And also the fact she had brown, bushy hair. And I didn't have brown hair. I was very, very blonde as a child. But I had very unruly, curly, wavy hair. And it was very, very thick and uncontrollable, so I could immediately relate to the fact that she had this uncontrollable bush of hair. Also, Hermione's sort of shown as not having very many friends. She doesn't really have friends until Ron and Harry save her from the troll. And, I could relate to that because I do not make friends very easily. I find it very hard to make friends. And her being bullied was something I had experienced myself. So instantly I kind of connected to her, and she quickly became my favourite of the three. Without going into too much depressing detail, because this is a topic for another podcast, but I just do want to briefly touch upon the fact that Harry Potter was one of the things that kept me going during my time at secondary school. My secondary school time was not a fun time at all. It was literally a living hell for me. So Harry Potter was one of the things I sort of clung to keep me sane, as it were. I know that sounds a bit strange, that I was clinging to something like Harry Potter to keep me sane, but it really was something that was just keeping me going. I ended up seeing the 2 Deathly Hallows films twice in the cinema each. And the first time I went was with my friend, my mum, my sister, and I just want to specify that none of my family are into Harry Potter. So, bless my mum for taking me, even though she was about 2 seconds from falling asleep because she really hates Harry Potter. But I remember when I was watching it, even though it was, I liked the film, but it was the fact that there were other people in the cinema who were running about and ruining the film for me. So then my dad ended up taking me. And my dad, bless him, he isn't a Harry Potter fan per se, but he put up with it for me. So I'm thankful for that. I saw the last Deathly Hallows film, which is Deathly Hallows Part 2. I saw that twice, because I went with my friend for her birthday. And then I ended up going with my dad, because I was like, Dad, I want to watch it again, and you haven't seen it. Dad, you've got to watch it. And I do remember I was sobbing. I was sobbing at the end of both of those films. And, I just remember feeling... For me, it felt like it came to an end too soon, because I'd only just gotten into the series. Bearing in mind, I got into it in September 2009, and the films finished in July 2011. It wasn't even 2 years of waiting for films for me. It was just, it all felt kind of very sudden for me. And so there was that, I suppose. Also, with the fact I got into Harry Potter, it allowed me to continue my writing. So I was in year 8, so this was about a year and a bit later. And so I was still very into Harry Potter, but I was in an English class, and my teacher was encouraging me to write because she said to me, your writing seems quite descriptive. I think with a bit of work, you could be a good writer. And I think one of the things that really, not only her obviously, but one of the things other than the teacher that kind of made me want to pursue writing was the fact that, J.K. Rowling had created this fantasy world, and I absolutely love fantasy. I am a big sucker for fantasy. And so, I had heard, I'd read up that she had suffered from domestic abuse. She had been quite poor when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. She was a single mum living on benefit. So it was quite inspiring for me to read that and be like, wow, if she can do it, so can I. And so it kind of did encourage me to start writing. And so I started off sort of seriously writing by writing Harry Potter fan fiction. Harry Potter has also been quite wonderful because it's allowed me to make new friends within the fandom that I wouldn't have made otherwise. People from America, people from other countries that I've never even heard of or been to. It's allowed me to share my love of the series with them, and it's allowed me to make friends online, which I find so much easier than making friends in real life. So it's really, this series has really been such a life changer for me personally, and I'm sure it's been a life changer for so many other people, which is why I'm forever thankful that J.K. Rowling decided to write the books, and I'm just so thankful for her. Now, as I said earlier, because the last film came out less than 2 years after I had first gotten into Harry Potter, it felt like I hadn't really been a part of the experience. I was reading stuff online from other fans who were like, I went to midnight premieres, I went to midnight book releases, so I didn't get to do any of that because, for a start, my parents would have never let me camp out in Trafalgar Square to watch a film premiere. They would have never let me go to a midnight premiere for anything. So I felt like I hadn't been a part of that experience. And I know now that I'm older that doesn't, going to midnight premieres and midnight book releases doesn't make you any more of a fan than anyone else, I still rarely go to midnight premieres and book releases. I've been to one book release, and that's for Cursed Child. And the only other thing I'm ever going to go to a midnight premiere for is Fantastic Beasts, but that's another topic. So, but at the time I was very young, and I felt like I was less of a fan somehow because I hadn't been waiting as much for these films, and I hadn't waited for the books, and I hadn't really gone through, you hear stories of people like when they're 5 being read Harry Potter, and I hadn't really gone through that. I had read the books myself when I was a bit older. As I've just said, the only book release I've ever been to was the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child screenplay, and that was a midnight release at Waterstones, and I don't regret going. It was a little bit strange to go because I felt like I was surrounded by a lot of children. There were a few adults there, but I feel like they had dragged their kids there so they wouldn't look a bit strange. But yeah, I don't regret going to the midnight release of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, but in my opinion, everyone will have a different opinion, and I respect that. But in my opinion, I felt a bit disappointed when I did read Cursed Child because it wasn't quite what I was expecting. And, it's not like it is one of the big Harry Potter books. It's like a Harry Potter screenplay. Not screenplay, but like a script thing. So, I don't regret going at all. I'm very happy that I went, even if my parents were a bit pissed off that my dad had to come to Walton and pick me up at 1 a.m. But, yeah. So this then comes on to Fantastic Beasts, because the same year that the Cursed Child rehearsal script came out was the same year that the Fantastic Beasts movie came out. So, just a quick bit of background. I was not actually very excited for Fantastic Beasts because I'd read the textbook and I didn't really think much of it. I thought, it's just a textbook. And at the time it had like Harry and Ron's doodles in it. So I was like, that's cool, but I was more interested in the doodles than the actual magical creatures. And so when I found out it was originally going to be a trilogy, I was like, this just seems like a bit of a cash grab to me. I'm not sure I want to watch it. And, I had started working in a cinema in January 2016. And so throughout the whole year, I'd just been exposed to Fantastic Beasts trailer before all the kids' films. I was just seeing it everywhere. And I wasn't really that excited. It was only when we got to sort of November and I ended up having to work the weekend it came out that I kind of started wanting to watch it, because I was seeing people come in, kids were coming in dressed up. Adults were coming in on their own, and they were coming out smiling, and I was cleaning up afterwards while the credits were rolling, and I was hearing the music, and I kind of felt like, wow, is this what it feels like to be in the midst of a Harry Potter film release? Like, is this how the people who went to midnight releases of Harry Potter felt, you know? And so I ended up really, really loving Fantastic Beasts, because after that weekend I went to Waterstones and bought the screenplay. Because at this point I was on the fence. I wanted to watch it, but at the same time I was worried that it wouldn't be good and it would ruin my perception of Harry Potter and the Wizarding World. So I went and bought the screenplay because I wanted to have a sort of a kind of knowledge of the story beforehand. And I did buy a making of book, and it's a big brown one called The Case of Beasts, I think. It's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it if you're a Fantastic Beasts fan. It is amazing. And I ended up reading that on the weekend, just before I went back to uni on the Monday, and I just instantly, just reading the screenplay and reading that making of book, I just fell in love with Fantastic Beasts. You know, I especially fell in love with Tina, and anyone who knows me will know Tina is my absolute favourite character. She's just, you know, I will go into that on another podcast, because this is not for me to discuss Tina and how amazing she is, but I will say that Tina was kind of the main reason I got into Fantastic Beasts, was because I first flipped onto her page and was like, oh my god, this sounds like me. She's got a younger sister who's more sociable, she's awkward, she's not very good socially, she kind of wants to do the right thing. And so I instantly kind of connected to that. I was like, you know what, that is just me. I felt like I was reading about me, and I felt like she was more like me than I felt like Hermione was like me. So, you know, that was kind of what really, really grabbed me into the Fantastic Beasts world. So anyone who knows me will know I actually do prefer the Harry Potter books to the Harry Potter movies, but I prefer the Fantastic Beasts movie to the Harry Potter movies. And I know that sounds a bit bizarre. Like, it sounds like blasphemy. You prefer Fantastic Beasts to the original? Oh my god. But I feel like for me, it's a natural progression for me to prefer Fantastic Beasts. And there are my reasons for preferring Fantastic Beasts, which again is for another more personal, depressing podcast that we're not going to do today. But I feel like, for me, Fantastic Beasts came at a perfect time in my life, because I was 18, nearly 19 when it came out, and so I was kind of on the verge of being an adult while still being a teenager. So I was sort of in the middle, and you know, it just came at a perfect time, because at this point my parents were like, why do you still like Harry Potter? You know, you're 18 now, you know, shouldn't you have grown out of it? Which, by the way, just a note for people, you can't ever grow out of Harry Potter. You know, I know so many adults who are part of the fandom, so if your parents are saying, oh, you're too old for it, tell them, you know, don't let the muggles get you down, you know, tell them that they're a muggle. You know, you're never too old for Harry Potter, and there are so many adults who are a fan of Harry Potter, so please, if your parents start saying that you're too old for it, just ignore them, okay? But yes, Fantastic Beasts kind of is a bit more mature and a bit more of an adult series, and it feels like perfect for the people who were children when Harry Potter was coming out, because it's like they grew up with Harry Potter, and it became, obviously Harry Potter did become more dark and more mature as the series went on. And Fantastic Beasts is even more mature, I feel, even though it can be watched by children. I've seen lots of people let their children watch it, and to be honest, if I had a child, I'd probably let them watch it too, within reason. But I feel like it is sort of very much targeted towards adults as well as children and teenagers. But yeah, I quickly became very, very obsessed with Fantastic Beasts. I'm still extremely obsessed with Fantastic Beasts. I'm sure if you ask any of my family members, whether it's one of my grandparents, one of my parents, or my sister, or even any of my friends, they'll tell you, yep, Megan, big Fantastic Beasts fan. Like, you know, I'm known at work as the one who's obsessive with Fantastic Beasts. You know, they know I just absolutely love it. And I even have a Fantastic Beasts tattoo. So yeah, I became quickly very, very obsessed with Fantastic Beasts, and I'm still extremely obsessed with Fantastic Beasts, and I'm still very obsessed with Harry Potter, of course, but at the moment I feel like I'm kind of experiencing what some of the older people experienced when they went to the Harry Potter movie premieres and the Harry Potter book releases, because I'm planning on going to the Crimes of Grindelwald premiere. I'm planning on going to the midnight release of the Crimes of Grindelwald at my cinema. So, I feel like I'm having that experience that a lot of people who are older than me had with Harry Potter, but I'm having it with Fantastic Beasts, which is why I absolutely love it so much, as well as it being an extension of the Wizarding World. So, I don't want to drag this podcast on too much longer, because I'm aware it has hit the 20-minute mark, and I'm sure none of you want to hear me talk about myself for the next 20 minutes. So again, as I said before at the beginning of this podcast and in the introduction video, if you guys want to guest star on the podcast, please do let me know. I would love to have people guest star on it. I would also love to hear you guys suggest topics I could discuss. If there's a particular character you want me to discuss, or a particular part of the fan, anything like that, I am more than happy to discuss it. I just love all aspects of the Wizarding World, whether it be Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts, or anything like that. I'm just completely open to hearing your thoughts and feelings and your ideas on what I should discuss. So how did you guys get into Harry Potter or Fantastic Beasts? Let me know in the comment section. I'm really, really excited to see if anyone is actually listening to this podcast, and also to hear other people's stories, because I feel like other people's stories into getting into Harry Potter is what makes this so special, because no matter how you get into it, how old you are when you get into it or whatever, the point is that you love the series. And I just think that's really nice. It just makes me really happy when I read about people getting into Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts. It just makes me really, really happy to read it. So just before we finish, a couple of things I just want to quickly go over. Now, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, but I have created a Harry Potter / Fantastic Beasts Discord. It's for people of all ages, whether you're 8 or 80. Please feel free to join. We accept people of all ages. It's just an open space for you to discuss Harry Potter. You can talk about characters, you can talk about your favourite ships, you can talk about theories for the films coming out. Whatever you want to talk about, just come to our Discord. I'm sure we're all more than friendly. I'm doing my best to keep it a safe and positive space. We've had a couple of hiccups since I created it last night, but I'm doing my very, very best to keep it a nice, positive space for everyone involved. But yeah, if you are a fan of Harry Potter and or Fantastic Beasts, just click on the link below and join our Discord server. As I said before, people of all ages are welcome. I'm very, very excited to meet new people and to talk about all other Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter. I just, I have a couple of rules. The rules are on the Discord server, but the main rule is that, because I want it to be an open and positive space, if we could just please keep ourselves from arguing. I don't mind discussion. I don't mind people disagreeing with each other, but it's when it turns nasty, when people start using derogatory language, that's when I have a problem with it. So as long as you're okay with not using derogatory language, or just be really respectful of each other, then please feel free to join. Now, because the release of Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald is fast approaching, it's currently just under 11 weeks away until the film comes out, I want to do something a bit beast related at the end of every single podcast. So what I'm planning on doing at the end of every podcast is just doing a beast, just doing a bit of a shout out to a beast. And for this first podcast, I want to just sort of do a bit of a shout out to a very, very special beast in particular, who I'm sure holds a place in many of our hearts, and that is the Niffler. Now, I don't understand how anyone could hate the Niffler, because he's absolutely adorable. He's black, and he's furry, and he likes to steal stuff, and he's just so much trouble, and I just love him a lot. As I say this, I'm actually holding my own plush Niffler. I got it from the platform 9 3/4 shop online, but you can also buy one from the Noble Collection, and I know that Waterstones does sell Nifflers. So obviously anyone who has read the Harry Potter books will know that Fantastic Beasts is not the first place you will find a description of Nifflers, because Nifflers also appear in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. If I remember correctly, and it's been like a few months since I last reread Goblet of Fire, Nifflers appear in one of Hagrid's Care of Magical Creatures lessons, and all the members of the class are given a Niffler, and the Nifflers scout out I think it's Irish, like the Irish fake coins that Hagrid has buried. And they're very, very cute, but they're also very mischievous. They're a bit like magpies. They like to steal stuff that's shiny. And I just absolutely love the Niffler. Like I said, I've got my own Niffler plush, and he's just absolutely adorable. I find that, hugging the Niffler is just really, really, it's very, very comforting to just have a Niffler and be like, oh, I would absolutely love a real life Niffler just to cuddle. It would just be amazing. I cannot wait to see what the Niffler does in The Crimes of Grindelwald, to be quite honest, because I'm sure he will cause some kind of mayhem or chaos. So yeah, that is my beast of this podcast. I want to thank you all for joining me for this far too long podcast. I wasn't expecting it to be this long, but I want to thank you all for listening, and make sure to hit subscribe, to like, and to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like I said, I would love to hear how you guys got into Fantastic Beasts and or Harry Potter, and I would like to hear if any of you have any topics or things you would like to hear discussed, or if you would like to have a guest starring spot in one of the episodes. Other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful week.